The morning light of Kepler 442b painted the diplomatic compound in shades of amber and gold. Captain Zoran Keth adjusted his ceremonial robes, the crystalline threads catching the alien sunrise as he prepared for what should have been another routine meeting with the newest members of the Galactic Harmony Coalition. The humans had been surprisingly cooperative since their admission 3 cycles ago, contributing medical advances and agricultural techniques that had already improved life across 17 systems. Yet something nagged at the back of his mind as he reviewed the morning briefings. His species, the Altarians, had evolved exceptional intuitive abilities over millennia of navigating complex social hierarchies. That intuition was screaming warnings he couldn't quite grasp. Ambassador Keth, his aide chirped through the translator. The human delegation has arrived early. Engineer Brianna Cross requests a private moment before the full assembly. Zoran's elongated fingers drummed against his desk. Brianna Cross had become the unofficial spokesperson for human technology initiatives. Brilliant, charming, and frustratingly evasive whenever discussions turned to Earth's defensive capabilities. Her warm brown eyes held depths that reminded him of the ancient ocean trenches of his homeworld, beautiful but concealing unknown dangers in their darkness. When Brianna entered his office, Zoran felt that familiar flutter of attraction mixed with unease. Humans were remarkably similar to Altarians in basic physiology, though their emotional intensity and unpredictable nature set them apart from every other species in the coalition. She wore a simple blue dress that complemented her auburn hair, but Zoran had learned to look beyond human appearances. Their clothing often concealed as much as it revealed. Captain Keth, Brianna smiled, settling into the chair across from his desk with that fluid grace humans seemed to possess naturally. I wanted to discuss something before today's session, something that might concern some of our coalition partners. I'm listening, Zoran replied, though his translator picked up subtle stress indicators in her voice that made his skin tingle with apprehension. Brianna pulled out a small holographic projector, its human design sleek and deceptively simple. We've been monitoring some unusual energy signatures near our home system. Nothing threatening, but our deep space sensors have detected several coalition survey ships approaching Earth's outer regions. The hologram flickered to life, showing a 3-dimensional map of the Sol system. Zoran had seen similar displays countless times, but something about this one felt different. The orbital patterns looked wrong somehow, as if crucial elements were missing or deliberately obscured. The issue, Brianna continued, her fingers dancing across the controls with practiced ease, is that those ships might encounter some of our older installations. Structures we built before joining the coalition when we weren't sure what we might find in the galaxy. Zoran's throat constricted. What kind of installations? Instead of answering directly, Brianna expanded the holographic display. New objects appeared in orbit around Earth and its moon. Massive, geometrically impossible structures that dwarfed anything in the coalition's databases. They weren't ships in any traditional sense. They were mobile worlds, bristling with technologies that made Zoran's most advanced equipment look like primitive tools. By the 7 suns, he whispered, rising from his chair as the full scope of the display became clear. What are those? Defensive platforms, Brianna said simply, as if discussing weather patterns. We call them sanctuary-class installations. This one is Bastille Station. She highlighted a structure that could easily house 1 billion beings. That's Ironhold. Another massive installation appeared. And over there is Prometheus Base. Zoran's mind raced as he tried to process what he was seeing. Each structure was larger than most coalition capital ships, armed with weapon systems that defied his understanding of physics, and shielded by energy barriers that pulsed with barely contained power. How many? 12 active installations, Brianna replied, her voice carrying a note of pride that sent chills through Zoran's nervous system. With 6 more under construction in deep space. Each one is fully autonomous, self-sustaining, and capable of defending Earth against threats we haven't even encountered yet. The implications hit Zoran like a stellar wind. You built these before joining the coalition, before knowing whether we were friendly. Exactly. Brianna's smile held a warmth that somehow made her revelation more disturbing. We learned long ago that the universe doesn't always offer second chances. These installations ensure that humanity will never be caught unprepared again. Zoran sank back into his chair, his mind struggling to reconcile the friendly, cooperative humans he'd known with this display of overwhelming military capability. The coalition leadership needs to know about this immediately. That's why I'm telling you first, Brianna said, leaning forward with an intensity that made Zoran's pulse quicken. We're not hiding anything. We simply didn't see the need to advertise our defensive capabilities during peaceful negotiations. But if coalition ships are going to be operating near our system, transparency becomes essential. Before Zoran could respond, his communicator chimed with an emergency alert. Ambassador Kextal's voice crackled through the speaker, distorted by what sounded like panic. All diplomatic staff report to the main conference chamber immediately. We have a situation. Brianna and Zoran exchanged glances, then hurried through the compound's corridors toward the main assembly hall. Other delegates were converging from various directions, their expressions ranging from confusion to alarm. The usual chatter of interspecies communication had given way to tense silence. Ambassador Kextal stood at the center of the chamber, his gas-based form rippling with agitation inside his containment suit. As one of the eldest members of the coalition, the voidling rarely showed such obvious distress. We've received preliminary reports from our survey team near the Sol system, he announced, his translated voice carrying harmonics of deep concern. What they've discovered challenges everything we thought we knew about human capabilities. A holographic display materialized above the assembly, showing images captured by long-range sensors. Zoran recognized the massive structures Brianna had just shown him, but seeing them from this perspective, as alien discoveries rather than human revelations, made them seem even more imposing. These installations appear to be weapons platforms of unprecedented scale, Kextal continued. Our preliminary analysis suggests they possess the capability to devastate entire star systems. The energy readings alone exceed anything in our historical databases. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Some species began activating their own translation and recording devices, while others simply stared at the images in stunned silence. Zoran found himself looking at Brianna, who sat calmly in her designated seat, apparently unfazed by the growing tension around her. Furthermore, Kextal's form shifted colors as his emotional state fluctuated. These structures appear to be fully operational, and have been for several cycles. This means humanity possessed planet-killing capabilities before, during, and after their integration into our coalition. The silence that followed was deafening. Zoran could feel the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions, accusations, and fears pressing down on the assembly. Then, slowly, Brianna rose from her seat. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the chamber without artificial amplification. "I believe there may be some misunderstanding about the nature and purpose of our defensive installations." Defensive? The delegate from Kepler 438b, a insectoid species known for their logical approach to problem-solving, chittered in obvious disbelief. Structures of that magnitude serve no defensive purpose. They are instruments of conquest. Brianna's expression remained patient, almost maternal. "With respect, counselor, that assumption reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology and history. We don't build weapons to conquer. We build them to survive." She gestured, and her own holographic display activated, showing historical images from Earth. Cities in ruins, landscapes scarred by warfare, populations fleeing from conflicts that spanned generations. My species spent millennia learning that the universe is not inherently safe or friendly. We discovered that peace, while precious, can be fragile and temporary. The images shifted, showing humanity's gradual expansion into space, their encounters with hostile environments, automated defense systems left by long-dead civilizations, and the remains of species that had clearly been wiped out by unknown threats. When we reach the stars, We found evidence of countless civilizations that had trusted in diplomacy and cooperation alone. Their remains drift in the void as monuments to the dangers of being unprepared. Zoran watched the other delegates as Brianna spoke. Some seemed genuinely moved by her presentation, while others appeared increasingly suspicious. The fundamental question underlying everything was clear. Could a species capable of building planet killers ever truly be trusted? Our installations, Brianna continued, exist to ensure that humanity never joins those silent monuments. They are not pointed at any coalition world. They are not hidden to deceive you. They simply exist as insurance against the unknown threats that this galaxy has already proven it contains. Ambassador Kextel's form pulsed with what Zoran recognized as deep contemplation. Engineer Cross, you speak of unknown threats, yet you've constructed weapons capable of destroying any coalition member who might oppose you. How do we reconcile your words of peace with this overwhelming display of force? For the first time since the meeting began, Brianna's composure seemed to crack slightly. A flicker of something raw and vulnerable crossed her features before the diplomatic mask returned. Because, Ambassador, we've learned that sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to make war so terrible that no one dares to start it. The chamber fell silent again, but this time the quiet held a different quality. Instead of shock or fear, Zoran sensed a growing understanding among the delegates. They were beginning to grasp something fundamental about human nature, something that had been hidden beneath layers of cooperation and diplomatic courtesy. The installations will remain, Brianna announced firmly. They are not negotiable, and they are not subject to coalition oversight, but they will never be used against any member of our alliance unless that member first attacks humanity or its allies. This is our promise and our warning. As the assembly dissolved into urgent discussions and private communications, Zoran found himself studying Brianna's face. There was something almost hypnotic about her calm certainty, a confidence that spoke of absolute conviction in humanity's choices. For the first time, he began to understand why his intuition had been screaming warnings. It wasn't because humans were dangerous. It was because they were dangerous and completely convinced they were right. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to coexist with a species that had looked into the abyss of cosmic indifference and decided to build monuments to their refusal to go quietly into that dark night. The observation deck of Prometheus Base stretched across nearly half a kilometer, its transparent aluminum walls offering an unobstructed view of the swirling nebula that had become humanity's most advanced construction zone. Commander Dante Rivers stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching automated construction drones weave between massive hull sections that would soon become humanity's 13th Sanctuary-class installation. At 34, Dante had already earned a reputation as one of humanity's most promising military strategists. But tonight he felt more like a diplomat than a soldier. The coalition's response to humanity's revelation had been swift and predictable. Panic, outrage, and barely contained fear wrapped in layers of bureaucratic protest. 3 species had already withdrawn from trade agreements, and rumors of a military coalition against Earth were spreading through the outer systems. The electromagnetic resonance patterns are absolutely fascinating, a melodic voice said behind him, speaking in accented but flawless English. Your species has somehow managed to create stable fusion reactions at scales that should theoretically cause gravitational collapse. Dante turned to find Serafina Veltar approaching with that fluid, hypnotic movement that characterized her. People. The Zephyrians were among the galaxy's most exotic species. Humanoid in basic structure, but with skin that shifted through subtle color changes reflecting their emotional states, and hair that seemed to move independently like liquid, silver. Serafina's scientific credentials were impeccable, but Dante found himself far more interested in the way her large violet eyes seemed to analyze everything around her with intense curiosity. Dr. Veltar. He nodded respectfully, though he couldn't help but notice how her form-fitting research suit accentuated curves that would have been appealing on any species. I didn't expect to find anyone else up here this late. Her skin flickered through shades of deep blue and purple. Colors that Dante had learned indicated intrigue and mild attraction among her people. I couldn't sleep. Your installations generate energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. As a xenotechnology specialist, I find them irresistible. There was something in the way she pronounced that last word that made Dante's pulse quicken. Over the past week, as coalition scientists had been granted limited access to study humanity's defensive systems, he'd found himself increasingly drawn to Serafina's combination of brilliant intellect and barely concealed sensuality. Most of your colleagues seem more frightened than fascinated, Dante observed, moving closer to her position near the observation windows. The preliminary reports I've seen use words like existential threat and galactic destabilization. Serafina's hair rippled with what looked like amusement, and her skin shifted to warmer golden tones. Fear often accompanies the discovery of something truly magnificent. Your people have created structures that exist at the intersection of art and annihilation. How could anyone with scientific curiosity not be captivated? As she spoke, she moved to stand beside him at the window, close enough that he could detect the subtle electromagnetic field that all Zephyrians generated, a sensation like standing near a gentle electrical storm. Tell me something, Commander. When humans build something this powerful, this beautiful, do you feel pride or terror? Dante considered the question as he watched a massive energy coupling being maneuvered into position by robotic arms the size of skyscrapers. Both, he admitted. These installations represent everything we are, our creativity, our determination, our absolute refusal to be victims. But they also represent our capacity for destruction on a scale that even we find disturbing. And, yet you build them anyway. Serafina's voice held no judgment, only fascination. Because the alternative is worse. Dante turned to face her fully, struck by the way the nebulous light played across her features. My sister Brianna showed your coalition the historical records. We've seen what happens to unprepared civilizations. We refuse to join their ranks. Serafina's skin shifted through several rapid color changes, deep purple, silver, then a warm amber that Dante was beginning to associate with her growing attraction to him. Your sister is remarkable. The way she handled the coalition's panic yesterday was masterful. But I sense there's more to humanity's story than even she revealed. Before Dante could respond, the observation deck's communication system activated with a priority alert. General Thane Cross's voice filled the space, tense with urgency. All senior staff report to command immediately. We have a situation developing in the Arcturus sector. Dante and Serafina exchanged glances, then hurried through Prometheus Base's corridors toward the command center. The installation's interior was a blend of human engineering and aesthetic sensibility. Functional spaces that somehow managed to feel warm and inviting, despite their massive scale. Serafina moved beside him with that graceful stride, her scientific instruments bouncing gently against her hip. Commander, she said as they walked, whatever this situation involves, I want you to know that not all coalition members view humanity as a threat. Some of us see you as exactly what the galaxy needs. The command center buzzed with activity as they arrived. General Thane Cross, Brianna's older brother and the overall commander of humanity's defensive installations, stood before a massive holographic display showing real-time sensor data from across local space. His weathered face bore the expression of someone who had seen too many crises but never stopped preparing for the next one. People, Thane announced as the senior staff assembled, we've got multiple coalition fleets converging on the Arcturus sector. Intelligence suggests they're planning some kind of demonstration, possibly a show of force designed to intimidate us into decommissioning our installations. Murmurs rippled through the assembled officers and scientists. Dante felt Serafina stiffen beside him, her skin flickering through rapid color changes that indicated deep distress. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Jessica Park spoke up from her position at the tactical station. Are we talking about a direct military threat? Unknown at this time, Thane replied grimly. But 7 different species have contributed ships to this fleet, including some we considered friendly. The message is clear. They want our planet killers gone, and they're willing to use force to achieve that goal. Serafina stepped forward, her scientific neutrality giving way to obvious emotional investment. General Cross, if I may, not all coalition members support this action. My own government has explicitly refused to participate, and I know of at least 3 other species that consider this fleet movement illegal under coalition law. Thane's expression softened slightly as he looked at her. Dr. Veltar, we appreciate your people's position. But the fact remains that we're facing the largest hostile fleet assembled in this sector for over a century. We need to assume the worst and prepare accordingly. The holographic display shifted to show the positions of humanity's installations. Bastille Station had already begun moving toward an intercept course, while Ironhold and Prometheus Base were powering up weapons systems that had never been tested in actual combat. The energy readings were staggering. Each installation could theoretically destroy entire worlds, yet here, they were preparing to defend rather than attack. Commander Rivers. Thane addressed his brother-in-law directly. I'm placing you in charge of diplomatic communications. If shooting starts, we need clear record showing that we attempted peaceful resolution. Dante nodded but found himself looking at Serafina rather than his commanding officer. Her skin had shifted to deep, troubled blues, and her hair moved, with agitated patterns that spoke of internal conflict. There's something I need to tell you, she said quietly, moving closer to him as the briefing continued around them. Something about why I really came here. Before she could elaborate, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. The holographic display flashed red as new contacts appeared on the sensors. The coalition fleet had arrived ahead of schedule and was already moving into attack formation. All stations battle ready, Thane commanded, his voice carrying the weight of decisions that could reshape galactic civilization. This is not a drill. As the command center erupted into controlled chaos, Dante found himself focusing on Serafina's face. Despite the crisis unfolding around them, despite the possibility that her own people might be among those threatening humanity, she moved closer to him with obvious intent. Dante, she whispered, using his first name for the first time. Whatever happens in the next few hours, I need you to know something. I didn't come here just to study your technology. I came because my government believes that humanity represents the galaxy's best hope for long-term survival. Her skin shifted to warm golden tones even as her words carried undertones of fear and desire. We've detected something beyond the outer rim. Signals that suggest the threats your species has been preparing for are real and coming this way. The coalition fleet out there is making a terrible mistake. Dante felt his world shift as the implications of her words sank in. What kind of signals? The kind that wiped out 17 civilizations in the Andromeda region over the past millennium, Serafina replied, her voice barely audible above the command center's activity. Your installations aren't oversized paranoia, Commander. They might be the only thing standing between the galaxy and complete annihilation. As if summoned by her words, the main display shifted to show the coalition fleet beginning its approach toward Bastille Station. Hundreds of ships representing dozens of species, all united in their determination to force humanity to abandon the very weapons that might soon be needed to save them all. Signal from the coalition fleet, Lieutenant Park announced. They're demanding immediate shutdown of all human installations and surrender of key personnel for war crimes tribunals. Thane's laugh held no humor. War crimes? We haven't fired a shot at anyone. The crime of being prepared for war in a galaxy that prefers to pretend it's safe, Dante murmured, then raised his voice. General, request permission to open direct communications with the fleet commander. Granted. Dr. Veltar, since you're here, would you be willing to assist with interspecies communication protocols? Serafina nodded, moving to stand beside Dante at the communications console. As her fingers worked across the interface, she leaned close enough that he could feel the electromagnetic field she generated brushing against his skin like a lover's touch. Dante, she whispered, after this is over, assuming we all survive, there are things I need to show you. Things about what's coming from the outer rim that will change how you see everything. The communication channel opened, filling the command center with the voice of Admiral Corex Thule, a Regelian known for his tactical brilliance and absolute devotion to coalition law. Human installations, this is Coalition Fleet Command. You will immediately power down all weapon systems and prepare to receive inspection teams. Dante activated his own microphone, aware that his next words might determine whether the galaxy descended into civil war or found a way to unite against external threats. Admiral Thule, this is Commander Dante Rivers of the Human Defense Force. Our installations pose no threat to Coalition members and will not be powered down. Commander Rivers, you are harboring weapons of mass destruction in violation of 17 different Coalition treaties. If you do not comply immediately, we will be forced to take action. Serafina's hand found Dante's arm, her skin flickering through color patterns he was beginning to interpret as complex emotional states. Fear mixed with admiration, desire tempered by duty, and underneath it all, a deep certainty that events were spiraling toward consequences none of them could fully predict. Admiral, Dante continued, we're willing to discuss reasonable inspections and transparency measures, but these installations are non-negotiable elements of human security. They will not be dismantled. The silence that followed stretched for nearly a minute before Admiral Thule responded. Then you have chosen war over peace. The Coalition fleet will commence attack runs in 30 minutes. I suggest you use that time to reconsider. As the communication channel closed, Dante found himself looking into Serafina's violet eyes, seeing his own complex mix of determination and regret reflected. There, around them, the command center hummed with preparations for a battle that could tear the galaxy apart. While somewhere beyond the outer rim, unknown threats continued their approach toward civilizations too busy fighting each other to prepare for what was coming. Serafina, Dante said quietly, if we survive this, I want to know everything you haven't told me. About the outer rim threats, about why your people really sent you here, and about why you're looking at me like the galaxy's fate depends on what happens between us. Her skin shifted to warm amber tones as she smiled, an expression that managed to be both seductive and sad. Because, my dear Commander, it just might. As Bastille Station's massive weapon systems came online, and the Coalition fleet began its final approach, two beings from different worlds stood together in the shadow of humanity's greatest creations, knowing that the next few hours would determine not just their own fates but the future of every thinking being in the galaxy. The age of galactic innocence was ending, and the age of human determination was about to begin.